So today in class 1, obviously we are going to start the initial definitions of the field, operations management, what it is, and the criteria of efficiency and effectiveness in operations management being productivity. We spend time analyzing productivity and the metrics, how do we compute productivity, the different types of productivity, and that will make a full class. So what's operation management? First, it's tied to production. Historically, the class was a production management class. But then comes the overwhelming concept of importance of processes. And you have processes everywhere. You have processes in services. Actually, the university run during the last, now more than 1 year, the last 2 years, a program called Six Sigma to improve the efficiency of its administrative processes, operations. And the Six Sigma is actually the application of all the principles of operations management and especially of quality control. So what's operation management? It's a set of activities that create value in the form of goods and services by transforming inputs into outputs. And the supporting activities, because there is a chain of production, but for example, human resource is going to be very much involved in operations management, but it doesn't directly contribute to the transformation of inputs into outputs. It's a supporting activity. So what's interesting is that operations management, as soon as you define it, as you can see there on the left in the blue bubble, as the black box, the transform between input, the left arrow, to output, in the right arrow. As soon as you define it that way, it becomes the definition of a system. Because that's a system. A system, by definition, is an object, can be real or conceptual. It has input and outputs, and it performs some decision or task and some operations to transform the inputs into the outputs. But there is another definition of systems, and that's going to make us understand exactly what we are going to try to do during this class. A system is made of subsystems, and these subsystems are related to each other. They work together to create the same goal, to act toward the same goal. And here, it's a production of services or goods. So the key here is to understand that this operation management system is built from different subsystems. They all cooperate and work together to produce the outputs, the services or the goods. And what's interesting is the notion of optimization. In order for the system to work correctly, the subsystems have to work together well. So the multiple decisions, the multiple, by the way, chapters, because we'll go in one chapter after chapter, we'll review all the key decisions of operations management, need to be congruent. They need to work together. They need to be aligned. And that's what's going to make operations management interesting. It's a system we need to optimize globally. So first, let me warn you. The span is huge. And you will see next, we'll define operations management another way as being everything but marketing and finance. So if you get ready in the corporation of accounting and finance and the sales and marketing, then you get all the rest is going to be operations management. So we are going to cover a huge span. The second one is that you'll see your book talks about the operations manager, and he does that, and he does that, and he does that. But actually, it's so huge that I never met one guy who really could be said as the operations manager. There is operations management, and there are multiple types of specialists, sub-discipline, sub-department, and they are going to take care of part of operations management. Some are going to be in product design, for example. Some are going to run some project. Some are going to be quality manager. Some are going to design layouts for the facilities, and so forth. But you cannot be operation manager and being wholly knowledge expert in everything. But what we do, so if you add up the 2 points, is that there is a huge span, and we are not going to go deep in each of the different chapter, in different subdomains of operations management. But so the class is going to be an introductory class. And sometimes I get students telling me, well, but it's, these questions, it's too much and so forth. Well, it's only an introduction. We are never going to go very deep. And it's important, actually, that you have an understanding of the whole thing. And again, I tie that to what we were saying before about optimizing the systems. You cannot optimize your system if you don't understand how these subsystems work together. Now, about the good thing is that if you are attracted by a career in operations management, there are plenty of jobs, well-paid jobs. It's very much Alaska because there is no much, financial or marketing headquarters in Alaska. But many corporations have got operations here. They do things, not at the functional headquarter level of finance, of marketing, but they run operations. So the jobs fit very well Alaska. And I have been in operations management for most of my career, and it's a fun environment because it's a real environment. It's not staff, it's not detached from reality. Things happen. You need, if you are running production, you need to have the right parts, the right components at the right place at the right time with the right schedule. And if not, you need to expedite. The best plant manager I've ever met are the ones who are able to walk along the line, and if something doesn't work, they can pull up their sleeves and go to the line and fix it and show to their people how to do it. So it's very much action-oriented, and for those of you who think about a career there, it will be plenty of fun. So first, let's talk about and define operations management, the task, and then we will go to productivity, which is a key metric to measure, again, efficiency and effectiveness of operations management. So it is one of the 3 major functions. We said that. We want also to study OM to understand what they do. And even if you don't do a career in operations management, even if you go for accounting or for information systems, you need to understand the turf you are going to work on. There are plenty of information systems that you will need to develop for the operations manager. Accounting, you will need to do cost accounting of production. And if you have no introduction about that field, it will be difficult for you to understand really what you are doing in those 2 other functions, finance and marketing. So I told you before, 40% of the jobs are in OM, and also, it costs a lot of money because that's where the key transformation from inputs to outputs, that's where we actually generate the product or the service. So if you look at a bank, for example, they show you here on the blue, on the left, the operations. And so you can see teller scheduling, check clearing, collection. That's the operations, transaction processing, maintenance, security, and so forth. But I would even argue that, of course, in the middle, you have got some accounting, auditing, you manage the assets in finance, and you're going to have financial experts doing that. But they put in marketing, the loans. for commercial, industrial, financial, personal, mortgage, and so forth. But certainly the design of the product in terms of marketing, to fit the market, is going to involve marketing people. But actually granting the loans, negotiating the loans with your customer, all that is also going to be part of operations. So airline, now, another type of company in the service sector, you are going to have all these operation tasks that you get again in the blue box. The ground support equipment, the maintenance, the catering, the flight operations, the crew scheduling, which is very complex, the flying, the pilots and so forth. It's all going to be operations, running the flights, running the schedule, running the ground operations. Yes, you are going to have finance and accounting, obviously, to run the finance of the company, like Alaska Airlines, for example. But they put again in marketing things like, the traffic administration, the reservations, the schedules, and so forth. Well, that's very much also part of operations. So there is an overlap here between marketing and operations because the schedule is part of operations. So you do a schedule to please the customer as a marketing guy, but you do a schedule also understanding the constraints of your operations. Now, manufacturing, that's more obvious. By the way, you can see the size of the blue box there. It's huge because in manufacturing, all the production is actually part of operations by nature and by historical heritage. That's where I was telling you operations management comes from. Now, there is something which had changed during the last 20 years, I would say, is that before you were actually the strategy, the business motto in general, you had conglomerate like IT&T, and the game was diversified. There were new technologies coming, new opportunities, new market, and large company would add up a division to their conglomerate and do something else. And they will generate, engineering subsidiaries doing, the design of plants. They will develop new product. And they will add up activities to their current core activities. Since 20 years, the trend has been reversed. We are now preaching for exactly the opposite. Focus on what you do best and outsource everything that you think is not essential to your operations, doesn't provide you the edge and competitive advantage that you need, and actually can be done better at lower cost by somebody else. So today the game is no more compete on your own. It's going to compete within a supply chain with your team, the supplier and the distributors. And the synchronization, the coordination, the orchestration of the operations across the supply chain, from, you can see the drawings there, the farmers to the retailers there, and that will be a supply chain for a soft drink, a pop like they say in the Midwest. All that has to be done to optimize the benefit for the customer, the end user, and provide this competitive advantage that everybody before in the supply chain needs to be competitive, survive, and grow. So these days, operations are across the supply chain. Now, look at this. It's interesting too. There are three options presented here to increase the contribution. Contribution being after, the variable cost and the financial cost. Let's look at what's going to contribute to the fixed cost and the profit. And I have 3 strategies. I can increase my sales by 50%. I can reduce my finance cost by 50%. Or I can reduce my production cost by actually only 20%. So it's 50% improvement in sales, 50% improvement in finance, compared with 20% improvement in operations. And you can see here, run the figures between the 3 columns there. And you can see that the best and, the best way to improve your productivity is going to be actually through the 20% decrease in production cost, because now your cost of goods, the second line there, is going to go down from 80,000 to 64,000. And that's going to be a remarkable, improvement in your bottom line there, the contribution. And so sometimes it's easier not to spend money, to save money, rather than to increase your sales like you will do with a sales strategy. And by the way, improving your sales 50% is something extremely difficult to do. So what do operations managers do? Well, they do, and you have learned it or you will learn it in your management class. What does a manager? He plans, he looks to the future. He does organize, which is he defines the responsibilities and the specialization of the people and their relationship. He staffs, he chooses the people and assign responsibility to specific people. Now he has to lead and show and, show the direction and preach by example. And then he is going to control the results. And, as managers, the operations managers are going to do exactly that. The structure of the book is actually the structure of the decisions there. You can see there are 10 decisions. We are going to review them one by one today, just as a definition. And actually the book, as you can see there, the chapters is actually following the structure of those decisions. And that's where I was telling you that nobody is really in charge of all those decisions. You are going to have VPs, in taking care of, for example, here, design of goods and services. And probably there is going to be another VP and another functional organization taking care of managing the quality. So, and so forth. We have, these multiple strategic decisions. So, first one, design. We'll see that design is actually maybe the most important phase. That's, and I told you a few words about that in the introduction, where I spent most of my career, where I started my business, where I did my research. And that's where you make the most important decisions, because when you have chosen a product, features, a process, you also design the process to build the product. And, the ease of transportation, of installation, of maintenance, the quality, it's all going to be in the design. So, design is actually very important, and we'll have a specific chapter on that. Most of the content of that chapter, by the way, will be my content. There is a significant gap between what we should know in business about engineering and design to run a business and what is actually known. There is a tradition that engineering and design should be actually left to the engineers because it's too technical, it cannot be controlled. These guys are always late, always over budget, they always run quality problems during the initial phase of deployment of the products. And so there was obviously an engineering VP and product development VP in the executive committee, but that guy was not really controlled. It was of business, it was engineering. But these days, you cannot run a business efficiently without knowing when the product is going to come, at what cost. Everything is in the product. Look your iPhone competition. Look about the cars. You can see where are the hot companies, hot car makers, just by going in the street and looking at, the style of the products, the most efficient, the most, the best design, the best technology you will recognize up front, and that's coming from design of goods and services. So the trend now is to have management understand and control engineering and design, and we spend some time on that. Quality, that's absolutely fundamental. We spend, 1 week on that. We'll actually do and go down in statistics and do statistical process control. As I was telling you, the Six Sigma program run by the University of Alaska to improve its efficiency in administration is actually coming from this principle of total quality management. Now the process, since maybe 30 years now, or 25 years at least, we understand and we focus on, you are as good as you actually do things. Your process will reveal your efficiency, your cost, your quality, and so forth. So to design the right process, to have the right capacity when it's time to deliver the product to the customer. So the capacity to apply the process, to have the right plans to make the product according to the process, all that is essential. Location. It's not only the real estate industry, and some of you are in real estate and you plan to study more about real estate and its location. But it's true also of, operations in general. I know specific business, they died because being on the wrong place. These days, to save transportation inventories, those parts in the trucks, the suppliers are coming close to the assembly plant and they will deliver directly to the assembly line. So the suppliers are going to regroup around the assembly plan. And so it's true for distribution, it's true for retail, it's true for so many different things. Layouts, look at McDonald's when you go there. Everything is organized so that people don't have one useless step. They will be at the right place. They will have the right tools, the right workstations, the right supply position so that they don't waste time in movement, useless movement. And layout is certainly critical for success in fast food. So human resource and job design, these days, people talk about culture at the workplace and the commitment culture, that you need to have people who give you more than, their time and go through the motions, but are going to work to improve. They are going to know the details of their operations, and they are going to be the most efficient at providing you with this continuous improvement, which will make your operations efficient. We talked about supply chain management before. Inventory management. Inventory is a huge part of freezing your assets. On top of that, there can be waste. They use space. They become obsolete if you keep them too long. So the key today, the key word is just in time. You do everything just in time so you can suppress inventory and optimize your investment. Part of it is actually to build the right schedule. So, your assembly line, for example, is going to be evenly loaded. so that if you are in the banking, you are going to have the right people at the right time when everybody comes to the bank, and you need the most tailors. So you are going to do part-time scheduling of a part-time workforce maybe in some industries, or in the banking, if you go to your bank, you will see the manager suddenly becomes tailors, because the schedule is such that that's when the customer come. And last but not least, maintenance, because these days you cannot run efficient operations if your equipment is breaking down. So you need to design strategies and preventive maintenance strategies to do that and keep your equipment running. We mentioned that there are many different subspecialties to operations management. And some of those have got associations, professional associations, which can deliver to you certification, and this certification will help you to find the job. Actually, I give a class of systems engineering for the project management department of the College of Engineering, and the class curriculum basically is based on the PMI program, Project Management Institute, there in the middle line, PMI. You have the Council of Supply Chain Management Professional. You have a similar, in supply chain, you have a similar council for the Charter Institute of Purchasing and Supply. And the APICS, the Association for Operations Management. All these associations, charters, councils can provide you more education, more training, and even better certification so you can get the right job. You know some of the names here that are part of the legacy, the history of operations management. One of the actually key event has been when somebody understood and found a way to create standard parts. Actually, Whitney, that you see it on the top left in the early concepts, was providing the US government with muskets, the early rifles, and he found a way to build them from standardized parts, and so he could supply also replacement parts, and you could repair, maintain this equipment, and that became a huge success. Henry Ford was only able to do his assembly line building upon this standardization of parts. Because before, in the very early days, the end of the 19th century, and at the beginning in France and in Germany, and then in US and in England and so forth, car manufacturing was actually a craft. And you would have to, make the part fit together by using a file, and grind some, shapes there to make, the assembly possible. Only when the part became standardized, you were able to move forward. And actually, we are not going to spend too much time on this evolution here, but each phase is building on the achievements of the previous one. So Taylor came later and applied scientific management to the study of work, of motions, of the selection of employee, reward system. All that was integrated to provide the most efficient and fair, actually. Taylorism is now considered as, the mechanization of the movements of the human being as a robot and so forth, but it was also built for, understanding how to reward people, the people who work, how to make them work at their best advantage, because they could have, bonuses for achieving over the standard production, and it was based on a scientific way of analyzing. So then, came the mass production era with Ford, the moving assembly lines that you can see there on the picture. Then you got all the beginning of all the computer application with CAD, computer-aided design, the electronic data interchange, and because the Japanese automotive industry was actually eating the lunch of the Western corporation, we began to realize here that quality was actually essential. The success of the Toyotas and Hondas and so forth was that not only they would run better, they would be more reliable, but also when you would resell them, they would have more value. And so quality became the key. Then, because you compete always on something more, on top of all that before standard quality product, you wanted to customize it because you will have like that, your neighbor will not have the same car on his driveways than your car and so forth, and people want to buy their own product and customize it. And today, we are in the globalization phase. You did follow the election. You know that we are losing manufacturing jobs based on outsourcing abroad, and we will spend time to analyze all that. So, we just talked about that. And, starting with Adam Smith, that I actually didn't name, but Adam Smith did have his theory on specialization. And so you specialize the work, you break it down, and you actually become more efficient doing that. Up to the recent time, we got these different phases where we kept building upon the results and the achievements of the previous efforts. One special mention to Mr. Deming, because he's one of my favorite guru of quality. He was born in 1900. He's actually in Japan revered as, a guru of, quality and efficiency and respect for people. You will see, we have an award called the Malcolm Baldrige Award for quality in US. It's called in Japan the Deming Award because he went in Japan and he taught quality to the Japanese when they were rebuilding their industry after World War II. And, his key message is that the system, the management system, not the workers, should be accounted as responsible for quality issues, for efficiency issues, and so forth. Because you need to design the right system and people will operate the right way. So I listed for you the 14 points of Deming. And he was the kind of guy who actually got pressure from Ford at the top level to come and work for Ford. And he will tell, the top management, Henry Ford II, directly, well, look, I'm not interested because of your culture, because of the way you point fingers on workers and not take responsibility for doing the right thing and building the right system to facilitate the work of the writer. And these workers will become actually cooperative and help you, and you will build up the team there. But all that comes from different angles, and you are responsible. You have the most responsibility because you are at the top. So you will see, if you list these different principles, you'll see the importance of driving out fear, stopping, pointing fingers and exhorting and workers to do more, but educating, having them involved in decision making, and rewarding and having the right collaboration culture so that the quality work can be done. All right, so there are here something fundamental we need to upfront address it. These days, the economy is actually an economy of services, and services have got so many differences with goods. You can see here the list of services. First, it's a huge domain from education, legal, medical, retail, wholesale, distribution, utilities, transportation, professional business services like CPAs and legal lawyer and so forth, finance, information, real estate, food, lodging, entertainment, public administration, government, maintenance, insurance, that's all services. So what are the key differences between goods and services? First, and we'll go through all of them, and they're all important if you want to understand here how it's going to apply to one or the other. So first, services are intangible. There is no objects there. When the goods, it's tangible. There is something physical. So if you go to your doctor, he's going to give you a prescription. Sure, there is a page of paper, maybe that he will write for you. But the service is intangible. It's thinking process. Well, if you buy a product, it's tangible. A service is going to be, in many cases, produced and consumed simultaneously. If you get a haircut, we make the haircut and consume the haircut at the same time. When product you are going to be able to store in inventory. A service is going to be unique. It's going to be yours, like your investment banker is going to give you an advice. When a product, like an iPod, they are standardized. Service, high customer interaction, and sometimes that's exactly what you are trying to get is, when you go to a class and listen to your professor, actually part of the value is there just in the interaction. You want his time. And when you are in production, you work in your factories, there is not much customer interaction for operations. As it is customized, the definition of the product is going to be customizable. The auto insurance are going to change with age and type of car. The products are standardized. The services can be knowledge-based, like legal, education, medical. When actually, usually the products are, because they are standardized, they are going to be subject to automation and mechanization in the production process. The service can be, in many different places. Like if you buy from Office Depot, you can go to their shop, you can go on the web, they can deliver for you. Different ways to provide the service. Usually you build a car in one plant and that's it. Quality, hard to evaluate for services. How can you say, well, this lawyer really did a remarkable job? You can say it, but where is the metric? The fact that you won, well, it can be luck this time. It could work this time and not work the next time. And it can be based on, different circumstances. And so, difficult to evaluate quality for services. If it's tangible product, well, you can measure a product. If the weight is correct, is the function, the acceleration, is correct. Well, the car has got these metrics to be evaluated. And usually you don't resell, a service. If you rent a room, the room is open for renting that night. You resell it to that, but the service was provide the service that night. That one cannot be resold. It's gone. It's perishable. Look at these curves. They are amazing, and there are more than we would expect. I'm sure I would have you in front of me and ask you directly, what are the different share in different sectors of employment. You will not have put services at something like 86%, for example. And look at the curve of the agricultural service employment. Right, it was in the 1800s, it was 90%, and now it's just a few, percent. Manufacturing actually went to a peak in 1950 with 32% and has been declining since. Here you have got the spread of the employments between different types of services to get to this 86%, 85.9 exactly. You can see that manufacturing is 8.2. Take a note that actually the construction sector is very important with 4%. It's half manufacturing is actually the size of the construction sector. And look at agriculture. I was telling you a few percent. Well, actually it's only 1.4%. So it's really, we are feeding people with 1.4% of the population. So these figures are remarkable. And you should try to remember some of those because they are first good quiz questions and they are essential. And maybe that gives you the philosophy of the quizzes. Is that to know that 86% is actually in service is very relevant because if you think it's only 50, you don't exactly know in which world you are living. We live in a world of service, and that represents 86% of employment. So now, definition of productivity. And, you will be quizzed on that. There will be some homework on that. It's a very simple, very basic definition. And I got mistakes in quizzes all the time. So you will remember productivity is the ratio of the outputs divided by the inputs, not the opposite. Every time I've got the opposite, inputs and outputs. No, it's outputs over inputs. So now, the economic system, you remember inputs, transform, and outputs. So in outputs, you have got labor, capital, and management. In outputs, you have got goods and services. And then you have the transform systems, the operations management. And you have got some critical figures also there. Management is responsible for 52% of the increase in productivity. Overall, over the last 100 years, productivity has improved by 2.5%. It's slowing down because services are more difficult to improve in terms of productivity than production because of the characteristic we just saw. But so management, 52%, labor, 10%, and capital, 38%. Try to remember the figures. These figures also, they are essential. And actually, the 52% for management explain to you why this class is important. Because it's the management which creates the most increase in productivity, the management system. So the Toyota production system that you are going to learn is actually responsible for driving productivity up. It's a management system. It's the optimization of the different subsystems working together to improve the ratio between outputs and inputs. And so you get these, things going on in each sector. Here we are at Starbucks. You have 10 analysts continually looking for ways to shave time. And so if you don't ask signatures for credit card under $25, well, you save 8 seconds. If you change the size of the ice scoop, because before to fill a glass with ice for a chilly drink, coffee drink, you had to do awkward, and several spooning of the ice. Well, you save 14 seconds. And a new espresso machine where you are going to clean and grind and, with one push of a button, you save also time. So you can see that they improve their productivity by 4.5% per year. And just doing what we just said, the three changes there, they increase the yearly revenue per outlet by 250,000 to 1 million, which is 33% improvement. That's remarkable. So output produced over inputs used. And that's how you measure the process improvement. So for example, if you can do 250 units in 1,000 hours, and I say it wrong, okay? So you see, if you can do 1,000 units in 250 hours, then the productivity is 4 units per labor hour. And that's a single factor productivity. We only use here labor hour. So we are going to have the number of outputs, number of units, 4 per labor hour. Now there is the other one, which is a multi-factor productivity. And we are going to add up at the denominator there all the different inputs, labor, materials, energy, capital, and so forth. It's called total factor productivity. And it's much more actually telling than the other one, because here it's not only the productivity of labor, it's going to be the productivity of your operations in general. But more difficult to be accurate with. One of the difficulties is that we are counting different things, so we need to use dollars most of the time, money, as a common unit. And let's review here, a case where we have 4 people, they work 8 hours a day, and the overhead is $400 for, the computer system and so forth. So you have got basically 2 costs. To input the payroll and the overhead, the payroll costs $640, 4 people, 8 hours a day. And the overhead is $400. So the first one, I'm going to look at the old labor productivity. I was doing 8 titles per day. I had my 32 labors hour. And so I have got, a quarter of a title per labor hour. Now I'm going to invest in a new computer system. My overhead is going to jump up to 800, but I'm going to do now 14 titles. So my outputs are actually 14 titles. And if I look at, single factor productivity, I still have 32 labor hours, and you can see that I have a real jump in productivity, but it's single factor. So it's not very realistic because you have an investment on the side. And so if I now take in account multi-factor with my overhead has changed from 400 to 800. And so my old factor productivity is going to be 0.0077, but my new multi-factor productivity, because I take in account the new overhead of 800, is going to be actually still better, but not as better as it was before. It's more realistic. So we have measurement issues for, multi-factors. You have to compare the same thing, and you cannot say, for example, it's a TV screen, because, the TV screens between high definitions and the previous are not the same. Also, you can say recently if your business was had an energy input important. Like you were highly, if you're a trucking business, and the gas and diesel cost has gone down during the recent years in an unexpected way, but you're not responsible for that. So you have got an external element. It's going to change, the size of your input there, the value of your input, the cost of the gas and diesel, and that's going to improve your productivity, but you're not responsible for it. And sometimes you just need the precise unit to measure, because you don't have it. What makes the difference between, a Porsche and a Camry, a Toyota Camry? Well, they're not the same car, so you cannot really measure different things, and you're not going to get all those factors correctly measured. So we said it, labor 10%, capital 38%, and management 52%, and that's why this class is important. In terms of labor, how can you improve it? Improve the education level. Improve the health of the people. Have them eat better, exercise. Maybe you see that now on TV, that workers, before they go and start their day at Toyota, they begin their day by some gym, doing some exercise, because they are going to be in better shape. It's good for them and it's good for the work. And it's worth paying the time for keeping, people exercising. They will be more productive and they will be in better shape. It's good for them too. So also, we get this public transportation, a daycare center and all that. That's part of what facilitates the work of especially women these days. They can actually get out of their home because there is a social system there in place to help them. In terms of education, think about that. Look at those three different exercises, and I'm going to give you 15 seconds of silence to look at them. So we are talking about some simple math. No? Well, half of the 17 years old in the US cannot correctly answer this question. That's surprising, but it's true. 1/3 of American job applicants tested for basic skill, and we are talking about, counting, reading, and writing, don't make it. They are under the level. So there is lots of potential there to still improve. In terms of capital, it's going up every year steadily, except when there is big crisis, something like 4.5%. And yes, capital, to have the right tool, capital investment is critical. So now let's talk rapidly about the service sector. We know all that, we saw that before today. They are labor intensive. They are customized to specific desire. There is some intellectual task performed when it's, a doctor or engineering consulting or counseling. It's difficult to mechanize based on the people, and it's difficult to evaluate for quality. But, that being said, you still can, for example, at Taco Bell, you still can, gain productivity. And what they did here, they revised the menu. They designed meals for easy preparation. Their subcontractor actually shipping the meat in plastic bags that you will reheat only by dropping it in boiling water, for example. The onions are diced and so forth. So that's the preparation that gone to the suppliers. The layout, we mentioned that for fast food is essential, so people waste time. The training, employee empowerment, and the new equipment, to clean a grill that auto-clean and use less water and less on energy. All that leads to the incredible figures that I am always amazed by that. The time to prepare a taco or a burrito is actually 8 seconds. Can you believe that? A manager before would control five Taco Bells. Now 30 for big cities. They cut the labor by doing, like we said before, by 15 hours. The floor space reduced by 50%. It's not only the space and the cost of real estate, it's also the heating, the maintenance, and so forth. So actually, between the time the customer pulls in and pulls out, 164 seconds. So it's less than 3 minutes. And so, the total means, 17 million per year saved in their 5,800 restaurants. There are new things, and we will, review them during this class. The global focus as soon as the next chapter. The supply chain, you need to partner, and we said it today. We need to be more green because we are wasting and we are polluting and we are killing the environment. More and more, we need fast product. Look again to your smartphone and look at what a fast product can bring to your company. Mass customization. You need to customize for specific product for your specific customer. Just-in-time performance and this change in employees. We saw all that, but so that will be theme we will explore and go deeper during the class. And to talk quickly about one of the fundamental change, you need today to be, sustainable. You need to respect the environment. You need to be green, not waste resource, recycle. And you need to be a social partner, a responsible social partner. So there is actually in your book a very interesting case at the end. We have regulation for recycling batteries. There is lead in batteries. Lead is catastrophic for whoever, is exposed to it in water and in the air and so forth. Kills really newborns and so forth. Because of difficult regulation here in this country, which are legitimate, certainly in most cases, we ship in Mexico those batteries to be recycled, where the regulations are not as stringent. But is that ethical? But that this ethical problem will be part of your responsibility as manager. All right, so goodbye for this first class, and we'll talk again in the class 2 about globalization. It's hot in it, But it's done, okay? How long was it? I had no clue.